So sometimes in our lives we get confused and we say, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? You know, and we run around asking people what we should do. This tells us what we should do. Yeah? You have your whole life's work cut out in this prayer. Okay? So we don't really need to run around and say, what should I do? What should I do? Yeah. Am I living my life the right way? Generate these mental states and you're doing the right thing. Okay? And so, you know, as we look around every day, you know, we do different things. We wash the dishes, we're building a building, we write reports, we write books, we, you know, fold clothes and do the laundry. And why are we doing all of those things? Those are acts of, we're creating virtue, you know, by making offering to sentient beings, by establishing the Sangha in the West. You know, we're not just building a building so we have a building or doing the laundry so that we have clean clothes, you know, or washing the dishes, you know, because they need to be washed. But we're contributing to, you know, planting the Dharma in this world that has so much suffering in it. Yeah, and in the process of planting, you know, planting the Dharma here, because of our motivation, then we're creating what he calls the roots of goodness, or we would call the root of virtue. Okay, and then you know, so we're doing it with this intention that is spoken about, you know, in the initial vows, the initial resolves, you know, and then enhancing them and dedicating them as we go through, because each succeeding resolve builds on what the previous one has done. Yeah. So, you know, when we talk about the thought training or mind training, this is what it entails, you know, taking daily life actions and putting them in a very big perspective and doing them with a mind that is, you know, virtuous and working for the benefit of others. Yeah. So it's not that we have to say, you know, here, yeah, I pray that all these roots of goodness may be bestowed upon all the boundlessly many beings and dedicated to the unsurpassed Bodhi. It's not that we have to sit, that we always sit in meditation position and think that, okay? We show it through our actions, yeah? Through what we're doing, we're, you know, creating roots of goodness and dedicating them for the welfare of all beings. You know, may it be that these vows of mine shall grow in each succeeding thought moment, so shall be produced again in each successive lifetime. How is that going to happen? Through moment by moment, you know, each succeeding thought moment, generating that intention in everything we do. And so, although the actions we do may look very ordinary, when they're done with a really huge intention, then they become huge actions. Yeah, even though from the outside it looks like you're plowing the snow or wiping a table. Okay, but the mind that's doing it is not an ordinary mind. Yeah, it's a mind with a very big picture about how to benefit the world, and a very big picture of trying to see that things are impermanent and things are empty and such, you know, when we're in the middle of doing these things. Okay, so what we're reading here is really, you know, it's setting in our mind the stages of how we want to practice, but then we start right now. Okay. So it isn't like, well, I'll recite this and then in a future lifetime, then I'll figure out, then somehow that's when the practice will start, where somebody will tell me how to practice it. No, we practice it right now by changing our mind in everything that we're doing. Yeah. And then, if we do that, then whatever we're doing, our mind can be happy doing it and feel satisfied with what we're doing. Whereas when we're doing things and our mind is just stuck in the immediate outcome and the worldly benefit, then it's very easy to be unhappy and dissatisfied and, kind of, it took me so long to wash the dishes and the quinoa is burnt on the bottom and, on and on and on. And all we see is, faults and problems. Okay. But that's because of the state of our mind, not because of the activity that we're doing. Okay. And so similarly, as we say in our motivation every morning, that different ways of doing things and different ways of seeing things arise. And it doesn't have to be a conflict and it doesn't have to be a big deal, And so if you have a big mind and you're working together with people for something that's, very much beyond our own little benefit of this life, then these little things don't become a big deal in your mind. You just work them out and you go on, because you're doing something really valuable. Whereas when our mind is just a mind that's, looking at the happiness of this life, then, oh, gee, these poor spatulas, somebody put them in the wrong place again, and, and that's ruining the whole kitchen. And, somebody else used the sewing machine and they jammed something and, they took the cloth that I was using and, the saw isn't working and, all these sentient beings, I put something somewhere and then they move it somewhere else, and then your mind is just filled with unhappiness all day long. Yeah. So it's, it just depends on where we choose to direct our mind. Yeah. And that's our choice. And reading things like this helps us lift the state of our mind and put it in a much larger perspective. Okay. So that's one of the reasons why we recite these kinds of things. Yeah. Okay. So we'll continue. This morning we talked about love being the way we spontaneously greet others, meaning love, meaning friendliness. And then when we see them having problems, we respond with compassion. When we see them having opportunities and good qualities and creating virtue, we respond with joy. And when they're doing well and don't need our help, or when they aren't receptive to what we're offering, then we practice equanimity. Yeah. And so if we can train our mind in those four, boy, we'll be so much happier, won't we? Yeah. Because then, okay, we try and help somebody. They're not interested. Instead of getting frustrated and angry and, it's just, okay, maintain equanimity. This isn't the right situation, the right time. Give them some space, and we'll see what happens in the future. Knowing that we can't control everything. Instead of getting frustrated and saying, but I should be able to make them do this. Yeah. Okay, so we're on the top of page 208. Love has the aspect of friendliness. Here we're quoting from Visuddhimagga. Its proximate cause is seeing others as lovable. When it succeeds, it eliminates malice. When it fails, it degenerates into selfish, affectionate desire. Okay, the ladder. So, this is very interesting to look at. Yeah, so it's near cause. It has the aspect of friendliness. The near cause is seeing others as lovable. So what do we? One of the principal things we have to cultivate in our mind if we want to have love. We can't just say love, friendliness, I should have it. We have to cultivate it. How? By seeing all beings as lovable. How do we see them as lovable? By thinking of their kindness and how our lives depend on that. And not only this life, but previous lives. Okay, so just staying alive depends on others. Everything we know, every opportunity we have, our knowledge, our skills, our talents, our successes, everything we have is due to the kindness of others. Okay, so when we see that, then it becomes quite easy to feel affectionate and friendly and loving towards others. Okay, so when it succeeds, when love succeeds, it eliminates malice, because we can't have love that wishes people well and malice that wishes them suffering in the same manifest in the mind at the same mind moment, because they're two contradictory things. So the more that we cultivate love and have that prominent in our mind and make that a habit, then it crowds out the malice. There's just no space for it. Okay, and we become less and less familiar with malice and ill will and resentment and grudges. Okay, if we don't really take time to think of others as lovable and to generate love that wishes them happiness and its causes. And if instead we spend our time ruminating on, they did this and they did that, and I'm disappointed in them and they should have acted this way and all that kind of stuff, if we devote our time to thinking like that, then we're going to crowd out love and we're going to also be pretty miserable. So again, it's just up to us how we choose to put our attention and our mind. Okay, when we are trying to create love, but we don't do it so well, when it fails, it degenerates into selfish, affectionate desire. So that means we get attached to people. So instead of cultivating love on a basis of equanimity, we start, saying, oh, this person's really good. I love them because they make me feel good. And I love this person because they praise me. And I love that one because they give me presents. And I love this one because they agree with my ideas. And so love degenerates into selfish, affectionate desire, which includes, it often can come into possessiveness. We want to possess somebody. We demand their attention. Okay. So it says the latter is the affliction of clinging attachment, which is often called love in society. So in the movies, in the media, what they call love, we call selfish, affectionate desire. Okay? Genuine love spreads to both those who treat us well and those who don't. Okay? It is firm and does not waver according to our mood or how others treat us. It is ready to help, but does not coerce others to fulfill our wishes. Okay, that's a tall order, isn't it? But it presents a view of what actual love means. Okay, so it spreads, we feel the same kind way towards the people who like us and the people who don't, the people who agree with us, the people who don't, the Republicans, the Democrats, the gun holders, the gun opponents, whatever it is, on one level, we feel equal, that these are just all sentient beings trapped by afflictions and karma. Yeah, and so we wish all of them well. Okay. And so because it's not based on transitory qualities, then this kind of love is firm and it doesn't waver. And then it doesn't go up and down according to our mood. Because you know how it is. One day we really like somebody, and then the next day we're fed up with them. Okay? So wouldn't it be nice to have a smoother mind that's more stable? Okay, so we're ready to help others, but we're not trying to control their lives and coerce them into doing what we think is the best thing for them to do. But rather we respect them and give them a choice. Combining love with the understanding of non-self demolishes any sense of possession. This love knows that ultimately there is no possessor or person to possess, no substantially existent person to give or receive love. The highest love wishes beings to have the highest happiness of nirvana. Okay? So seeing ourselves as empty of inherent existence, seeing that there's no inherently existent person there, that is, so much better than everybody else from their own side. Yeah. We don't fall into that kind of trap. Okay, then compassion has the aspect of allaying suffering. Its proximate cause is seeing helplessness in those overwhelmed by suffering. Okay, so seeing people who are suffering. And suffering doesn't just mean, without kind of suffering. Yeah, it means also seeing people who have worldly happiness as really trapped by their worldly happiness. Yeah, we usually look at people who are wealthy and powerful and say, wow, they have such a good life. They can make so much happen. But actually, they have their own misery, and often their wealth and power trap them. Yeah, I think Trump is an excellent example of this. Wealth, power. Is this a happy human being? Not a happy human being. Okay? So, so seeing helplessness in those overwhelmed by suffering, it doesn't just mean, that they can't get food and clothing. It also, like in his case, the mind is helpless to steer itself in any kind of virtuous way of thinking that would bring him mental peace. Okay, when it succeeds, so when compassion succeeds, it reduces cruelty. So compassion is the opposite of cruelty. When it fails, okay, so when we're trying to generate compassion, but we don't do it so well, it produces personal distress, which means the focus changes from the other person's situation to our pain and having to see them in that situation. And then, the compassion degenerates. Compassion enables us to look at suffering in all its tortuous varieties without succumbing to despair. So this is really important, I know there's a lot of people who talk about burnout, compassion burnout, but now some people are really saying, if you have compassion burnout, it hasn't been pure compassion to start with. Yeah, and because the compassion burnout is the personal distress. Yeah, and so that's why bodhisattvas, this practice of fortitude or patience is so important. They cultivate a mind that has internal strength that can bear to see the misery of others, Yeah, and can bear to see that you can't snap your fingers and make it all go away, but that hangs in there and doesn't fall to despair or distress. Okay? So compassion motivates us to reach out to others directly or indirectly. So directly doing it ourselves, indirectly by other means, maybe asking somebody else to do it or some other way, but reaches out in order to alleviate their suffering. Okay, so we might look at some of the people who are rich or famous and see their misery and say, well, how can I change that? You know, they don't know me. They don't want to know me. How can my compassion really help them? And this is where doing the taking and giving meditation is important, because even though we may not know the person or may not be able to directly help them, we maintain a connection with them on a mental and emotional level by thinking that we want to take their suffering upon us and give them their happiness, our happiness. Compassion does not favor some and exclude others. It isn't limited to those who are obviously experiencing suffering. It does not blame others for their suffering, but realizes that suffering ultimately stems from ignorance. So that last part, also very important. Sometimes we see people in distressing situations or suffering situations, and we look at their lives and we say, you know, that idiot, look what he did. He got himself in that jam. And then we get angry at them. Okay. And we can see this sometimes in government policy. There's some anger at people who are poor, as if they deliberately try to get themselves in that situation, you know, and they should be able to pick themselves up by their own bootstraps. I've never seen anybody do that. Have you? Yeah. So, you know, the genuine compassion doesn't get angry at people who have made poor choices that have resulted in their own misery. Yeah, but see that those people, their minds were under the influence of ignorance and afflictions and karma, and they didn't really have free choice because their afflictions were so strong that they just overpowered any wisdom that they may have had and made them have poor choices. Okay, and so to not get angry and fed up with them. Joy delights at the happiness and good fortune of others and opposes jealousy. Meditation on joy enables us to see the goodness in the world. Joy is characterized by bringing joy. That's nice, isn't it? Joy begets joy. Its proximate cause is seeing beings' success. Yeah, so we see others' success either in worldly ways and spiritual ways, and instead of comparing ourselves to them, we just rejoice at what they did and what they have. So its proximate cause is seeing sentient beings' success. When it succeeds, it reduces jealousy and boredom. Okay, so if you're ever bored, practice rejoicing in others' virtue. But when it fails, it produces overexcitement. So that's the kind of thing, when you're attached to somebody and then they do well, you get so excited about their success. Okay, so sometimes you can see with parents when their child succeeds, then the parent is just, floating in space and overly excited. Yeah, so that's kind of going too far in the joy. Then equanimity is a balanced mind that remains tranquil and ready and steady no matter what we encounter. Wouldn't it be nice to have that kind of mind? So no matter who we encounter, who talks to us, what they say, where we are, who we're with, whether people are kind or not, whether they share our views or not, our mind is steady. Wouldn't that be nice? Whew. You know, right now we're really like emotional yo-yos, you know? Oh, this person said something nice. This person criticized me. This person did what I want. This person didn't do what I want. Oh. Yeah? No wonder we're so tired at night, you know? We've been riding this emotional roller coaster all day. Okay. So, equanimity is not apathetic indifference that builds walls to protect us from pain. So this is very important. Equanimity is not apathy. Apathy just, that's the wall. I'm protecting myself. You know, their pain hurts, their things hurt, so I'm just going to tune them out and build that wall and be apathetic. That's not equanimity. Yeah. Equanimity, you're open to them. Okay, but your mind's able to be steady. Equanimity allows our spiritual practice to stay on track without being buffeted around by excitement or intense emotions. Clinging to nothing, equanimity gives space to appreciate everything. Gee, did I write a sentence like that? I must have copied that out of a book. It's a beautiful sentence, isn't it? Yeah. Clinging to nothing, equanimity gives space to appreciate everything. Because when we cling to something, then our mind says, I'm only going to be happy when I'm with this person or have this object or be at this place. But when we don't have that kind of clinging and craving, then we can appreciate whoever we're with, wherever we're at. Equanimity is characterized by promoting the aspect of balance towards beings. Its proximate cause is seeing the ownership of karma thus. Beings are owners of their own karma. Okay, this is this line, beings are the owners of their own karma. It's from the Dhammapada, from many sutras you find this. You know, what's the one thing we own? The karma we create. Okay, so how does that relate to equanimity? Okay, we see that everybody is experiencing the result of their own karma, the result of the actions they themselves did. Yeah, so when we see that, and we see that they, you know, that they either created their karma, that karma under ignorance and are experiencing suffering, or they created that karma under wisdom or kindness and they're experiencing some happiness, we just see that, you know, that's how they're in the situation they're in. And so we realize, you know, that's how things are happening and why they're happening, and we don't get thrown off by it. Okay? For example, there may be somebody that you care a great deal about, and they're really, mentally, they're not in a good place, or financially, they're not in a good place, or whatever it is, they're having some problems. And so instead of just getting so emotional and wrapped up and, you know, oh, they have this health problem and they have this and that, and I'm running around trying to control everything and nothing's working out as I please, and they're getting sicker and they're getting angry at me even though I try and help, you're able to step back and see, you know, this whole situation is a karmically created one. under the influence of ignorance. They're experiencing the result of their karma. I'm experiencing the result of my karma. I still do the best I can in the situation. So I don't use karma as an excuse to not do anything. I do what I can to help, but I don't get all emotionally involved in, the things that I'm doing have to be instantly successful and people have to realize what I'm doing. And I mean, you know how we get into that. Yeah. Do you? Yeah. Okay. So, So seeing the ownership of karma as thus, beings are the owners of their karma. So when equanimity succeeds, it makes anger and attachment subside because instead we have an equal, open-hearted concern towards others. When equanimity fails, it produces an unknowing equanimity. Okay? So kind of like apathy. We go into apathy instead of equanimity. Understanding karma engenders equanimity. People meet with results caused by their own actions. Understanding that there is no I or mine releases craving and other afflictions, allowing equanimity to arise. Okay, so it's showing here that really for equanimity to come in our mind, we have to see that ourselves and the other person are empty of, any kind of true existence. Mm-hmm. So there's no way to play favorites. There's no truly existent person to blame or to praise. Everything happens due to causes. And once the causes are ripening, you can't, a seed that has sprouted, you can't make it unsprout. Yeah, you have to go along with what's happening. So joyous effort is crucial when beginning to practice the four immeasurables. Taming the hindrances by applying their antidotes is important in the middle as practice continues, and meditative absorption is essential at the end. So showing how to develop first joyous effort, and then applying hindrances to the antidotes that applying antidotes to the hindrances. That's what we went through last Friday night. And then being able to absorb the mind in any of the four immeasurables. You had a question?
Yeah. On seeing beings as the owners of their own karma, this always sounds like potential victim blaming to me under the right circumstances.
It's not victim or victim blaming. It's saying everybody bears responsibility for their own actions. Yeah, like when we were talking the other day, and you were telling me about what happened when you went to school, to college, and you said, this was my own doing. I didn't stay in college, and because I created a mess, and you were bearing responsibility, but you weren't blaming yourself like you were a victim. And nobody else was blaming you. So it's that kind of attitude.
But what about when there is a victim involved? When somebody's knifed in an alley, robbed at gunpoint, or raped? Do you say to that person, these are the fruits of your karma coming to fruition?
Okay. If the person is a Buddhist, and if that person has deep conviction in karma, then yes, you can say that, and that person will be able to apply it and alleviate their own suffering by saying, yeah, this is the ripening of my own karma created by my own ignorance, my own self-centered thought. By it ripening in this bad circumstance, it's finished. It's no longer obscuring my mind. And so now I'm going to deal with the circumstance and I'm going to learn whatever I can and take that circumstance into the path to awakening. So if somebody's a Buddhist and they have that kind of faith in karma, you can say that. If they're not Buddhist, if they don't have faith in karma, know that you do not say that. Okay? One time, I'll tell you one of my big boo-boos. It was, do you remember when it was flight 102, the one that got shot down over Lockerbie? Yeah, and there were a bunch of students from a university in Syracuse on board that plane. So this must have been like 1989 or 91. It was a long time ago. Okay. And so I was going many places to teach and, and I was much younger. And so one of the places was the University of Syracuse, where the students were from. And so people asked me during the Q&A session, how do you explain what happened to our friends that were on this flight that got shot down and they died? And then I said, from a Buddhist point of view, this is how we would look at it. I will never do that again. Okay? That was not the right thing to say to those people. Yeah? What I should have said is, yes, it's very painful and you're suffering a great loss, and I can understand how confusing it is and how much you hurt and so on, and you need understanding and you need comfort and you need a way to go forward in your life with hope and optimism. That's the kind of thing I should have said. In other words, I should not have answered their question directly, because the answer, although true, was not suitable for that audience. Okay, so, does that answer your question okay? Yeah. Yeah, so it depends, as everything, what you say to somebody depends on who they are and how they think and what their disposition is, because you have to really think about, what is going to benefit them at this time and what are they really asking? So in that case, when people said, why did the plane get shot down and our friends die? Really, why it happened was not really the question. Yeah, and why it happened doesn't help anything. What they were really saying is, please say something that will help alleviate our pain and help us put the situation in a context so that we don't feel overwhelmed by sorrow and can go forward. That's what the real question they were asking. But I answered the literal question, which was a mistake. Okay, so now it's going to go into each of the four immeasurables in more depth. And this is according to the Pali tradition of how to cultivate them. So first is love. Since hostility is the opposite of love and prevents its development. So that's important to remember. Yeah, because sometimes we have a lot of animosity in our mind and we just kind of dismiss it. We don't think of the disadvantages of our animosity, our anger. Okay, we just kind of let it sit there in our mind. But when we think, that animosity, that anger is the opposite of love and prevents its development, then, then we're going to say, look what I'm doing to myself. Yeah. Do I want to hold on to this animosity, or do I want to have space in my mind to develop loving kindness? Because the two are not going to coexist. Okay, so again, it's my choice. We begin by reflecting on the disadvantages of hostility and the benefits of fortitude. Okay, it says that in the book. We've read that many times. But when we're upset, do we think about the disadvantages of hostility and the benefits of fortitude? No. We think about the faults of the other person and the benefits of anger, because that's going to mean that we're somehow going to get them to change, or at least somehow get them to realize that they are the cause of our suffering, not our karma. True or not true? Yeah? I mean, this is how confused we are. Yeah, we might as well own it. If we can't admit this, if we can't admit the truth of this sentence, then forget about remedying it. Then we're just going to be stuck in our stuff and, not get anywhere. Okay, so we have to think about the benefits, the disadvantages of animosity, hostility, and anger. Yeah, and that means that we really need to sit down and look at our experience of anger and look at, what has happened in our life when we've been angry. So first of all, we have to learn to identify anger in ourselves. And then we have to think of specific times when we've been angry and how we've treated people, what we've said, what we've done, and then what has the result been? Yeah. Have I felt happy about that? Has it increased my self-confidence and increased my self-respect? How did the other person respond to my anger and my revenge? In other words, really looking at our own life and specific instances and asking ourselves, did anger benefit me and or the other person? And be willing to be honest about it. Yeah. If we're not willing to be honest, if we're still stuck in I'm right and they're wrong and I'm a victim of their actions and I've got to protect myself because they're evil, if we're stuck in that mentality and we're not willing to give up that mentality, then we all practice equanimity around you. That's the meaning of practicing equanimity. Okay? Because then there's nothing we can do. Okay? So hostility, here's some disadvantages of hostility. Hostility crushes trust and tears apart valued relationships. It destroys our merit and compels us to act in ways we later regret. Okay? So you had a situation of this recently, didn't you? Yeah? And you really saw the disadvantages of anger. Uh-huh. So that's good. That gives you some awareness, like, oh, my anger doesn't serve me. Mm-hmm. So fortitude or patience is like a soothing balm. It attracts others to us and protects our virtue. Yeah. So if you want to destroy your merit, the easiest way is to get mad at other people. Yeah. If you really are intent on destroying your merit, get angry. Okay. And generate wrong views. Yeah. You will be instantly successful. Okay. If you don't want to destroy your merit, then meditate on the disadvantages of anger And when you see anger starting to arise in yourself, remember those disadvantages and say to yourself, it's not worth getting angry at this little thing because that's going to make me experience these big results that I don't want. At the beginning, it is important to cultivate love towards specific people in a definite order. Do not begin the cultivation of any of the four immeasurables towards somebody to whom you are or could be sexually attracted. Okay? Because if you start out cultivating love and seeing them in beauty, your attachment is going to take over. Okay? They have some story. What was it? In one, maybe in the Visuddhimagga or somewhere, but where some person was, cultivating love for the beautiful woman who happened to be in the room next door, and the result of his, his meditation was that he was like banging on the door into her room. He wanted to go in because he loved her so much. Sexual harassment has existed for a long time. Yeah. Okay. So the people that you cultivate love towards should be alive, because we don't know what form the deceased are in now. So you don't cultivate love towards people who have passed away, but people who are alive now. When cultivating love, you can cultivate, if you want to cultivate love towards people who are deceased, you can do it later on, and then that is a very good way also of leading to forgiveness if there's things that you need to forgive them for. When cultivating love, begin by using yourself as an example. Contemplate repeatedly, may I be happy and free of suffering. May I be free from hostility, affliction, and anxiety, and live happily. Isn't that a nice thing to wish for yourself? May I be happy and free of suffering. So that means, may I have happiness inside. May I be free of suffering inside. It doesn't mean, may I go out to the mall and buy the possession that costs $5,000 that I think is going to make me happy. That's not what it's saying here. It's wishing ourselves to have a happy feeling and not a suffering feeling. And wishing ourselves to be free of anger, hostility, affliction, anxiety, and to live happily. Okay? So that's very different than how we often treat ourselves. We often say, oh, look what I did. I'm a failure. I messed this up. My mind's so full of garbage. I don't deserve to be alive. All this self-talk that is complete nonsense. Okay? And so, when that kind of self-talk comes, we need to realize that it's nonsense talk and instead come back here and to start generating love for ourselves. May I have happiness. May I be free of suffering. May I be free of hostility and affliction and self-blame and self-denigration. Yeah? So really, wish yourself those. May I be free of anxiety. May I relax. Yeah? Yeah. And so, wishing ourselves well in that way is quite important to do. Yeah, so this isn't self-indulgence. It's wishing ourselves well as a preparatory step towards wishing others well. Okay? And it's a step in alleviating all sorts of wrong conceptions that we have towards ourselves and critical thoughts that we have towards ourselves. Generating love towards ourselves isn't selfish because the goal is to generate love towards all beings, which includes ourselves. We too are worthy of love and kindness. This meditation counteracts self-hatred, freeing us to develop our potential. Okay, so you do that to start with. Then the next step, okay, then contemplate, just as I want to be happy, so too do other beings. Cultivate love for someone you respect and hold in high regard, such as your spiritual mentor or another teacher. Okay, if we begin by cultivating love for a dear one, attachment may easily arise under the guise of love. However, this will not happen towards someone you respect. Okay, so you see the difference there? If it's somebody we're attached to and we start wishing them to be well and happy and free of suffering, likely attachment's going to arise. But if it's somebody that we respect, that we don't have this sticky kind of attachment towards, then cultivating love towards them works better because we're not going to get into the stickiness of trying to possess them or trying to make them like us more than they like other people or stuff like that. Recalling the help you have received from this person, contemplate, may he be happy and free from suffering. May he be free from hostility, affliction, and anxiety, and live happily. And so you spend some time just contemplating that, imagining that person, being free in that way, having those qualities, just as before you imagined yourself being free of hostility and affliction and anxiety and free of suffering. So you really imagine yourself being free, then you imagine the other person being free. Okay, then the third step, then extend your love more broadly. Yeah, so first to a dear friend. So now we're coming to the dear friends, thinking in the same way as above. When the mind is malleable, generate love for a neutral person, seeing her as a very dear friend. So somebody you feel neutral towards, the person at the bank, the person at the grocery store, whoever. When you can do this, so when you gain some familiarity with that, so first yourself, then someone you respect, then someone you care for, then a neutral person. Okay, so when you can do this, then cultivate love for an enemy, seeing her as neutral. So we saw the neutral person as a friend, and now we're seeing the enemy as neutral. So enemy means someone you are hostile or critical towards. The person does not have to be one who reciprocates those disturbing emotions. Okay, so it's somebody that you feel threatened by, that you don't trust, that you think is going to hurt you. So whether they're going to hurt you or not, or whether they hate you or like you, doesn't matter. It's somebody towards whom you have hostile feelings. Okay? So this step can be difficult. Because anger or the wish for revenge may arise towards those who have harmed you. If you cannot get past these disturbing emotions, return to meditating on love towards one of the previous persons. And when the mind is drenched in that feeling, again generate love for the enemy. Okay? So if instead of feeling more compassionate towards the enemy, you start to feel more agitated and angry, then leave that and go back to contemplating love for yourself or for a friend or for a neutral one, and then return to the enemy afterwards. Okay. So again, enemy just means somebody that you're not at peace with. It doesn't mean that it's somebody that you're at war with. Okay. If hostility persists, apply an antidote, such as the ones offered below. If one doesn't release the anger, if one antidote doesn't release the anger, try another. So begin by remembering the disadvantages of hostility. Yeah, so that's how we start to oppose our anger. The Buddha detailed 7 disadvantages of anger. Okay, while an enemy may wish us to be ugly, experience pain, lack prosperity, wealth, a good reputation, harmonious relationships, and have an unfortunate rebirth, we bring all these upon ourselves through our own anger. Okay, so those are the 7 disadvantages. An enemy may wish us to be ugly, to experience pain, to lack prosperity and wealth, to lack a good reputation, to lack harmonious relationships, and have an unfortunate rebirth. So that somebody may wish us those 7 things, but they can't bring any of that upon us. We bring all these upon ourselves through our own anger. Don't we? Because we're the ones who create the karma. Yeah, through our anger, we create the karma to be ugly, to experience pain, to lack prosperity, wealth, a good reputation, harmonious relationships, and a good rebirth. No enemy can make that for us. We create the negative karma ourselves. Okay, so letting our mind dwell in animosity destroys our virtue and inhibits our spiritual progress. So it's good, when we have some disharmony in relationships, to say, oh, this is a karmic result of my own anger. Yeah, so I need to remember this and in the future abandon my anger. Because I don't like this result, so I need to stop creating the cause. Hearing others' disturbing speech often triggers anger in the mind. Here the Buddha counsels us. So here the Buddha's going to tell us what to do. When all those horrible people criticize us and blame us, and you know what they do. Okay. Buddha says, you should train thus. Our minds will remain unaffected, and we shall utter no evil words. We shall abide in compassion. We shall abide compassionate for their welfare with a mind of love, without inner hate. We shall abide pervading that person with a mind imbued with love. And starting with him, we shall abide pervading the all-encompassing world with a mind imbued with love, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility, and without malice. So that's what we do when other people's disturbing words or actions trigger anger. Okay, we stop and we say, I'm not going to let my mind, it says, our minds will remain unaffected and I shall utter no evil words. So I'm going to cut it in the bud, nip it in the bud. Okay, yeah, I shall abide compassionate for their welfare. So I'm going to see their suffering with a mind of love, without inner hate. Yeah, so you're telling yourself, I'm not going to get involved in that old habit of blame and hatred. Yeah, and instead, I shall abide pervading that person with a mind imbued with love. So how do you have love for Kim Il am I saying his name right? Oh, huh? Jong Yeah, I'm not very good at Korean names. Kim Jong-il. Okay, that's the one that's presently in power. Or is that the father or grandfather? Yeah, I think it's Kim Jong-un. That's the present one. Anyway, him and Donnie. Okay? And we can throw all the white racists in there too. Okay? And so starting with those people, yeah, we're going to pervade that person with a mind imbued with love. In other words, why are those people acting in a way that I don't feel good about? Yeah, why are they acting in that way? Because they're unhappy. Yeah, they feel threatened. They feel insecure. Their inner needs are not getting met. So instead of getting angry with them, yeah, I'm going to wish them well. And knowing that if their needs were met, then they wouldn't be doing that behavior at all. Yeah, that there's things fueling that behavior that if those needs were met, that behavior would not be going on. Okay. It's kind of like when you have a problem child, those of us who have been teachers, you know that kids are acting out and in class, but they're really trying to tell you something and they don't have the words to tell you something. So they act out their unhappiness. And if you can pick up on that and figure out what their unhappiness is and help them have that need met, then the child's behavior is going to change. Yeah. I was teaching third grade, and there one kid in the class, David Nicky, very bright kid, was acting very well. I really liked him. And then he started acting out in class, yelling and acting horribly. And one day he just slammed a cabinet door right in my face. And I dragged him to the principal's office. And I was a new teacher. I didn't know then what I know now. I learned that his parents were getting a divorce. And now I understand that's why David was acting out. You know, he was 9 years old and his parents are separating and his world is falling apart and he doesn't know where he belongs or what's going on, and he may be blaming himself for the divorce. I don't know. But that kid is crying out for help. So instead of seeing, here's a kid who's acting disrespectful and even violent, here's a kid who's asking for help. And if his needs can be met, that behavior is going to stop. So actually, what happened is after I took him to the principal, of course, the principal called in the parents. So I'm hoping, this was many years ago, David's probably 50 years old now, I would say. But hopefully by the parents getting called in, they would realize what their child was trying to say and would help him. Yeah. But I was, it was my first year of teaching on my own. Yeah, you had those experiences too? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's too bad when you have a mind that's old and experienced, that at that time you don't have a body that's young, so you can do more. When you have a body that's young, you have a mind that has no experience and that, does all sorts of things. And then by the time you get the experience, then your body is saying, Okay. Sorry, people who are young in the audience. This is what you have to look forward to. Okay. So after that quotation that we had, this is love in the state of jhana. Yeah, when you're able to hold your mind like that. Okay, such love will carry over when we leave the jhanic state and return to an everyday state of mind. Even if we have not attained jhana, training our mind to approach all beings with a loving attitude will overwhelm our discomfort, suspicion, and malice, and imbue us with ease and affection for all. Okay, reflecting on the person's good qualities when he is in a congenial situation enables us to dispel our critical attitude. Yeah, so, wait until somebody's in a good mood and then it's easy to see their good qualities. We can then recall this when he creates trouble. Okay, because what often happens is we only remember a person when they create trouble. We don't remember the person when they were congenial and helpful. And so we create a very rigid preconception of them based only on behavior in a situation where we saw them in negative light. Okay, so if we remember how they are in other circumstances when they're cooperative and helpful and so on, and we focus on that, then later on, when there's a difficult situation, we can remember, but they're also like this and they're helpful. And then that way we don't get stuck in negativity. Okay. If it is difficult to see any good qualities in the person, generate compassion for him, thinking of the destructive karma he is creating and the suffering he will experience as a result. So if we really get stuck, and can't generate anything positive about somebody, then think of the destructive karma they're creating and have compassion for them. There is no use wishing harm to someone who is bringing harm upon themselves. It is better to generate compassion for them. So somebody who is in the middle of creating tons of negative karma, what is the benefit of wishing them harm? They're creating the causes for their own suffering. Yeah. So, we may look at the white racists or, whoever it is that, and you can look at them and say, here's these angry people and I'm angry at them because of their beliefs and I'm fighting their anger with my anger. Or you could look at them and say, wow, here's a bunch of people who are incredibly unhappy, incredibly confused, creating tons of negative karma. Yeah, if you look at their faces, that tells you right away. They aren't smiling. If you look at the pictures of what happened in Charlottesville, those people weren't smiling, talking about racism and advocating white supremacy with smiles on their faces. They were angry and they were bitter. So they're unhappy, and through their anger, they're creating a whole lot of negative karma. Okay. Okay. So in that way, there's no use wishing them harm. Thinking of the Buddha's responses to aggression. So here he's giving us all sorts of remedies for how to deal with our anger so that we can generate love. Okay. Thinking of the Buddha's responses to aggression in his previous lives as a bodhisattva can inspire us to forgive others for their faults. The Jataka collection tells many stories of the bodhisattva's previous lives in which he responded to aggressors with compassion. Okay, so one story that I like to think of, his cousin Devadatta. Yeah, I always say this if you think you have problems with your relatives. Devadatta, was terribly jealous of the Buddha, and he did all these things to even try and kill the Buddha. So he pushed a huge boulder down from the top of the mountain, thinking that it would just crush the Buddha, but it didn't. He released a wild elephant, a mad elephant, and mad elephants, I haven't seen one, but apparently you don't want to see one. And this elephant went charging towards him. The Devadatta's idea was that he would trample the Buddha, but the Buddha meditated on metta, on love, and by the time the elephant got there, he was on his knees bowing to the Buddha, just by the force of the energy of the loving kindness the Buddha was radiating. Yeah. Okay, so you think of those kinds of things, and the Buddha had to face those kinds of difficulties too. Yeah. And, you look at what His Holiness has to face. People criticizing him, people promising him to do things and doing the opposite, so on and so forth. Yeah. So, and you look at how those people deal with others, and you get some examples of, okay, if they deal with people who are behaving in that way with kindness, then I can too. Reflecting that all sentient beings have been our mother, father, siblings, and children, we see that they have all benefited us in the past, and that it is therefore unfitting to harbor enmity for them. Our affection and gratitude for others then overpowers any resentment. So this is another way to think to deal with our hostility. Okay, because in the above paragraphs it was said, here's what follows are some ways. We can also ask ourselves, who am I angry at? Among the 5 aggregates in dependence on which this person is called so-and-so, what aggregate am I angry with? Am I angry with their body? Am I angry with their vocal cords? Am I angry with their mind? But I can't see their mind. Am I angry with their feelings? Am I angry with their moods? Am I angry with their discrimination? What in the world am I really angry with?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But we can't even see some of them. We're just guessing at what they are. Okay, so searching for the real person who is the source of our anger becomes like painting in space. Yeah, it's a nice, thing. When you're angry at somebody and you're repeating over and over all their faults, think, I'm painting in space. It's a nice image, isn't it? Yeah, what's happening? I'm painting in space. What do I have to show for it? Space. Another suggestion is to give the person a gift. Others' hostility towards us and ours towards them subsides when a gift is given and received earnestly. So that reminds me of a story I heard about Lama Zopa, and somebody asked Rinpoche. They said, I have this neighbor, an old man who has dented my car. And I went to the guy, and I knew he was the one who dented my car because the paint that was on my car matched the color of his car. And I went, this guy just denied it, and he wouldn't help at all. And now there's this horrible attitude, feeling between us. And so, Rinpoche, what do I do? This guy's just, he's a neighbor, and it's just so tense between us. So, what was it? So this person had heard, actually I'm getting the story a little mixed up. This person had heard Rinpoche at one time before say, when you have a problem with somebody, give them a gift. So this person was telling their friends about the situation, and one of their friends said, give him a gift. Okay? So the older man was, he was a golfer. He likes to play golf. So they, the man whose car had gotten dented got him some really nice golf balls and wrapped them up and took them over and rang the doorbell. And the guy answered, and, he gave him the gift of the doorbell, of the golf ball. And the guy just, he accepted it. He was very puzzled. But then afterwards, his behavior completely changed. Yeah. Yeah, I practiced this a lot when we were organizing Life as a Western Buddhist Nun. My co-organizer and I sometimes were like that. Do you remember any of that? Yeah. So, so I tried to give her, when I got candy or something, I would think it's like a torma offering, and give her a gift. And that helped my mind. Okay. Once anger and resentment have dissipated, cultivate love towards the enemy, just as you did towards the others. Okay, reciting the formula, may you be happy and free from suffering. May you be free from hostility, affliction, and anxiety, and live happily. Reciting this is a tool to help us generate the mental state these words indicate. If the recitation becomes mechanical, express the meaning in your own words. So feel free to change the words. Yeah. Alternatively, think in more detail about the types of happiness you wish someone to have and imagine her having them. Make the meditation more personal. Yeah, so really think of that person, what you would like to see them have or become, and really wish that for them in a very personal way. Slowly your love will arise and gain momentum. After a while, the meditation will carry on by itself without need to use the formula. Okay? So in other words, you get so habituated with that attitude that when you just think of other living beings, your response is that kind of affectionate love and friendliness and wishing them well. Okay, now the next step is to break down the barriers. Okay, by seeing the 5 individuals, yourself, the respected person, the friend, the neutral person, and the enemy, as equal and generate love for them equally. So that's called breaking down the barriers. Okay, so in the Pali system, they don't start with equanimity towards these different groups of people. They start with love and then break down the barriers so you can have equanimity and equal love for them. In the system, of the 7-point cause and effect for generating bodhicitta, first we do equanimity and then we go into the meditations to generate love. Okay, when the barriers between the 5 people have been broken down and you are able to extend love equally to all 5, simultaneously the counterpart sign appears and access concentration is attained. So remember last week when I was talking about the different signs? So the counterpart sign appears, and you attain access concentration. So that access concentration is serenity. Repeatedly practicing the counterpart sign, you will attain the full concentration of the first jhana. With this, the 5 hindrances have been suppressed, the 5 absorption factors are present, and the liberation of mind by love is attained. So all those things happen. We went through last time the 5 hindrances and briefly did the 5 absorption factors. Okay, and then the liberation of love I talked about this morning. Yeah, okay, so all of that happens. And it is so called because in that absorption, the mind is liberated from anger and hostility. Okay, so this is also called love as a divine abode, or love as Brahma Vihara. Okay, sometimes Brahma Vihara is translated as a divine abode. So that's the liberation of mind by love. Okay. So I think we better stop. And then we'll take up tomorrow. We're right in the middle. You just attained access. It's not the greatest point to stop, but remember it and hold on to this idea. So when we start tomorrow, you won't be, you'll be already at access. You won't be down still holding a grudge at somebody. Okay?
The counterpart sign simultaneously appears. I was wondering how that looks like for love.
It would probably just be that, as far as I understand, simply that little light. Yeah.